Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about the nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today, we're talking about episode 93, The Facts of Lice. As usual, we'll start with a brief summary of the episode. There is a lice epidemic in the Sheffield home. All three children and Fran have been infected, but Maxwell, who has been spending less and less time with his kids, is initially unaffected. Meanwhile, Fran finds a suspicious list dropped by Niles that reads, secure alibi, cut phone lines, put on gloves, tape mount, clean up blood, dispose of evidence, pick up bananas. And she becomes convinced that he is secretly a murderer. When Maxwell takes her advice and plans to take his children out for seafood, Fran is terrified of being left alone with Niles. Maxwell doesn't take her concerns seriously, believing that she will say anything for a 4-pound lobster, and takes the kids out to eat. Fran tries to avoid Niles, but ultimately knocks herself unconscious. When she awakens, she learns the truth. Niles isn't a murderer, he's a playwright. Maxwell and the children return home very quickly due to some uninvited pests. Maxwell has caught the lice. Even though his head itches like mad, he, the children, and Fran go back out to eat to avoid reading Niles' play. Bernadette, do you want to add anything?
Nope.
All right. Would you like to take us to scene 1 in the kitchen?
Yes. So we open in the kitchen. Gracie and Fran are there. Gracie's getting ready to go to school. And Gracie mentions, Fran, my head is so itchy. I think I'm allergic to this hat. And she takes off her hat and Fran takes it from her and she says, oh, sweetie, I hope not. I mean, it's adorable. And she puts the hat on her head. And immediately for me, knowing the title of this episode is The Facts of Lice, I'm like, oh no. And Fran, though, admires herself in the mirror and she says, oh, maybe you are allergic. So Gracie leaves without the hat. Fran's still wearing the hat. And Niles comes in. Well, he comes down the side staircase with a basket of laundry. And he's just like, oh, man, like, how dare you order me about like that, sir? After 30 years of loyal service, I think I deserve a little more respect. And he kind of throws the basket down on the ground. God, I wish you were home. And through the speaker, we hear Maxwell say, I am. And of course, like Niles has this look on his, and he like quickly rushes over to the speaker. And Fran's like, oh, cut him some slack. He's your boss. You know, he has so much pressure on him. And Niles is like, oh, stop trying to butter up to that pompous brat. I turned it off. And we hear once again from the speaker, no, you turned it up. And so, of course, he rushes to remedy that. And then Niles goes on to say, you know, life is just not fair. He's just as smart. He's just as talented, you know, talking about Mr. Sheffield. And he's like, who came up with the system of the haves and the have-nots anyway? And Fran says, well, you know, thinking it's the haves. And then Niles is kind of like asking Fran, well, how does she feel? Kind of being in that same kind of position of menial work and stuff. And Fran's like, oh, you know, this is just, nannying is just a temporary gig. One day I'm going to be Mrs. Have. And Niles is like, oh, that makes me Mrs. Have's, you know, butler. And so Fran kind of points out, you know, not with that attitude. And he's like, oh, sorry, you know, I could be more peppy. You know, I can make that thing you like. And then he has a moment of self-reflection, like, oh, now I'm sucking up to the maid. So, and Fran, of course, is like, you were this close to working for us or with us. And anyway, again, still going on, Fran's like, you know, where's all this anger and bitterness, you know, coming for? It's I guess it's a mark of low self-esteem. Sorry. Is the anger and bitterness, you know, a mark for low self-esteem? Where's this coming from? And of course, at that moment, Brighton comes into the kitchen and says, Niles, can you wash my underwear? And throws his dirty underwear in a sack, I think, like to Niles to wash. And it's like clear this is why he is angry and bitter.
Wouldn't you be?
Yeah, this kind of treatment. So that is the opening scene. Do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Okay, can you take us to the living room?
Sure. So Fran is, I guess, sorting laundry, and she's sitting near Yetta, and she comments, "Oh, would you look at this? Brighton left a half-eaten Three Musketeers bar in his pants." And she like opens it, and says, "I love him," and then takes a bite. Yetta then comments to her, "Well, I can tell you that your mother never left any food in her pockets." And then she adds, "Although I once found a chicken carcass." Niles is in, the back, dusting the piano. And of course he's dusting the piano keys. So you hear like disconnected, sort of random notes being played. And she, Yetta gets up and she like takes $1 out of her fanny pack and sticks it in the bowl on the piano. "Thank you." And then she comments to Fran in her stage whisper, "No wonder the joint is empty." And so Maxwell comes in and sees Yetta and asks her, "Well, to what do we owe the pleasure?" And Yetta says, "Well, Sylvia told me to meet her for lunch. I assumed here." So Maxwell then goes and talks to Fran, and he tells her that he has an important meeting that night. And so he's afraid he's going to have to reschedule family night. And she's like, "Reschedule? But this is when we were going to spend quality time with me and the kids. Don't you remember dinner and a romantic carriage ride after we dumped the kids at the movies?" And he's like, "Well, why don't you just take them somewhere?" And then he hands her some money. He's like, "There you go. I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time." And she's like, "But you're just spending less and less time with the kids and they need a masculine influence." So Yetta chimes in, "I'll go. I don't have any estrogen." Fran kind of ignores her and continues pestering Maxwell. "I'm sorry, but I just think it's important that parents spend time with their children. They should talk to them and take them shopping and visit them all the time and eat them out of house and home and nag them about not being married. When is mom moving to Boca?" The doorbell rings and Fran says she'll get it. And who's at the door? It's Sylvia. And Sylvia's like, "Fran, I'm sorry that I'm late picking Yetta up. I was at the gym." And Fran's like, "When did you join a gym?" And Sylvia says, "When they put in a muffin bar." And Fran's like, "Ma, when they say do 100 crunches, they don't mean Nestle's, right?" And then I think Gracie walks in and she's scratching her head. And Fran says hi to her and tells her to, "Stop scratching your head like that. People are going to think you got lice." And Gracie's like, "I do. They sent me home from school." And so she hands Fran a note explaining why she was sent home from school, which, side note, I don't know any school that would just send a kid home like that without having the kid be picked up. And so Fran looks at the note. "Oh my God, it's a lice epidemic at your $14,000 a year school. Vermin they give you, but you still got to bring your own juice." And Sylvia chimes in with what she must have thought was a helpful comment. "You better be careful. Your father got lice from his poker cronies." And then she clarifies, "Fortunately, I just threw his hair out." And anyway, so Fran's like, this doesn't reflect well on me. How could I not know this? I'm the closest person in the world to these kids. And Gracie's like, "Fran, it itches." And she like approaches Fran and Fran's like, "Nope, that's close enough, sweetie. Bugs jump." Do you have anything you want to add?
I do not.
All right. So take us to their returning home from the doctor.
Yes. So they're coming through the front door, coming back through from the doctors. Fran says, "Okay, kids, you heard the doctor. We all have lice. Take off your sheets and pillowcases. We need to boil them." And Maggie actually offers, "Hey, do you want me to get yours?" And Fran's like, "No, mine has to be burned." And then she kind of stage whispers to Maggie that, she wants that gorgeous Bill Blass comforter set. And so Maggie goes, the kids go off. So it's actually Fran and Mr. Sheffield, because Mr. Sheffield had also gone with them to the doctor's office. And Fran's like, "Well, isn't it amazing, that, she has lice and he doesn't? Like, what does that say to you?" And he says, "Welcome to the Four Seasons Maui, Mr. Sheffield." And Fran goes on like, "No, this, indicates that you don't spend enough time at home. If you cared, you would be covered in lice like I am. And then she's like scratching her own head and she kind of comments like, how did they penetrate 6 layers of final net? It's like a biosphere up there.
Right.
So Maxwell, though, is like defending himself that he happens, to work a lot. He doesn't lounge around in his underwear all day doing nothing. And Fran's like, well, would it kill you to just give that a shot?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there was a comment about I think Niles enters at this point, and he's commenting about how his father was in service for, like serving the Sheffield family for 44 years, and he didn't have the same treatment. And he's kind of like,
he didn't remember him doing any of these things or something.
Yeah, he's like grumbling to himself, like obviously not in a great mood. And Maxwell's already gone. Niles is going by. Something falls out. And so Fran's like, oh, you dropped it. And she reads it. And as you mentioned in the summary, this, piece of paper says, secure alibi, cut phone line, put on gloves, tape mouth, clean up blood, dispose of evidence, pick up bananas.
Mm-hmm.
And Niles comes back in and Fran's like, Niles, what's with this cockamamie list? And he's like, you didn't read that, did you? And he kind of like has an intense look. And she's like, well, suppose for argument's sake I did. And he's like, well, it's very private and I would be very, very upset with you. And again, he's kind of intensely gazing at her. So she's like, that's why I didn't read it. Bye-bye. Like, and tries to like get away from him. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so.
Can you take us to the next scene?
Sure. So we're now in what appears to be a pharmacy, and we'll shortly learn it is the pharmacy. And Fran is there with Val, and Fran is saying that, when I saw that list, I just got chills up my spine. And Val, sort of puts gasoline on the fire. Well, Fran, your suspicions are valid. Obviously, his schizophrenic tendencies are about to manifest themselves in a homicidal rage. And Fran's like, yeah, but what about the bananas? And then Val thinks momentarily, and she's like, well, I'm no expert, but I'm thinking a pie.
And Fran kind of gives her a look at that.
Right. Because it's just so random, especially considering the rest of the list. So then they like approach the pharmacy counter, and Fran's talking to the pharmacist, and she says, excuse me. And she like lowers her voice. I called earlier about picking up the special shampoos. The name's Fran Fine. Well, her attempts at subtlety and not having everyone know her business is quickly thwarted by the pharmacist named Fred, who announces over like the speaker, hey, Rick, Fran Fine's here for her head lice shampoo. Oh, here it is. Fran Fine kills lice, ticks, fleas. She grabs it from him going, shh. And then she realizes that the guy behind her is giving her a look. And she's like, look at this. I'm getting attitude from a man holding a fleet enema. And so they like kind of step away. Fran and Val step away. And Val's like, well, I'm telling you, Fran, Niles fits the profile. Serial killers usually have menial jobs, no long-term relationships, and deep-seated issues with their mother. And then, she realizes...
They both gasp.
Yeah,
they look at each other suspiciously.
No. Yeah. And then Val continues, well, let's see. Most serial killers have 3 names, John Wayne Gacy.
Wait.
Oh.
Before that. Then she goes on to say, oh, and they also have high IQs, and they both give a sigh of relief and hug each other because neither of them have, according to them, high IQs, so they no longer fit the bill.
Oh, that's interesting, because I interpreted that part of the scene a little differently.
Really?
So you're right. Val adds that they usually have high IQs and they both gasp and then they hug each other. I'm with you. I'm with you there. I took it as them realizing, oh no, Niles does have a really high IQ. We need to hold each other because like this is scary.
So I interpreted it as like they were going through the menial jobs, like no long-term relationships, deep-seated issues with mother, and so they get suspicious of each other and they back off from each other. But then when Val says high IQs, they realize, oh, okay, we're not serial or we're not fitting the profile. But anyway.
Lovely listeners, let us know which one of us you agree with.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Val continues going on with her apparently like very comprehensive knowledge of serial killers or murderers in general. Most serial killers have 3 names: John Wayne Gacy, Richard Allen Speck, son of Sam. And friends like, Val, what are we even talking about here? We're not dealing with some sicko stranger. It's Niles. I know him very well. I stand behind Mr. Niles. She realizes she doesn't know his last name. The killer. And Val's like, Fran, I can't believe you've lived in the same house with Niles for 4 years and you know absolutely nothing about him. Have you ever even been in his bedroom? And Fran's like, Val, that wasn't the bedroom I was concentrating on getting into.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, right. Like we all kind of know that. Do you have anything you want to add?
I do not.
All right. Would you like to take us to Niles' bedroom?
Yes. So we see Fran and Val opening Niles's door, kind of looking in and then stepping in, and Val comments, "Oh, it's so small and depressing. No wonder he's always walking by your door, when it's open and looking in. He's envious." And Fran's like, "No, he's just horny." And then Fran kind of tries to redirect them. Okay, look, we have to look for the incriminating evidence. And she opens a drawer and she's like, oh, duct tape. And then she's like, wait a minute, he's not Jewish. He knows how to fix things.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, a phone rings on the other side of the room. And the answering machine picks up. And so we hear Niles's, answering machine recording where he says, "Hey, this is Niles. Leave me a message and I'll call you back. Ciao." And we hear then the message. "It's Jim from the morgue returning your call. In answer to your question, it takes 24 hours for rigor mortis to set in." And then he just hangs up. And so, of course, Val and Fran are like, and Val's like, "Oh my God, like, why would he ask that?" And Fran's like, maybe to make that banana pie. Mm-hmm. And she's kind of poking fun, at Val's earlier comment. And then Fran opens another door and like gasps. And then it turns out it's because the closet is bigger than her own. Mm-hmm. And they walk into the closet. Yeah, twice as big. They walk into the closet and like Niles has a large closet and actually has one of those like I've only ever seen them in movies and shows, right? Kind of one of those electric, kind of what you would also find at like at dry cleaners. Yeah, where you hang up the suits and you can press a button and it starts moving around to show you the different options. And Fran comments though, like he wears the same thing every day. He's like Fred Flintstone. Mm-hmm. And anyway, at that moment though, we kind of hear Niles outside in the hallway. He's about to enter. And at this point, they had stepped out of the closet and they freak out hearing him approaching. Val goes for under the bed and Fran goes back into the closet. Mm-hmm. And so Niles comes in. He goes directly to the closet. He's kind of, again, muttering to himself. Like, oh, yeah, I'll trudge 6 blocks through the snow and ice because you crave, for some string cheese.
Yeah.
And he like presses the button to get the hanger kind of thing to move, but he's not looking directly at it as he's getting ready to go out. And of course, we see Fran go by like inside of a jacket hanging. Mm-hmm. we see her just kind of go by and he doesn't notice. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No.
Okay. Can you take us to the kitchen?
Sure. So Fran and Gracie are in the kitchen, and Fran is like checking her head to see if there are any more lice. And Cece walks in and sees the scene, and she says, "You know, Nanny Fine, I always suspected you studied childcare with Diane Fossey." Fran,
Yeah. Well, can you describe a little bit like what it looks like
yeah.
when Fran is checking?
So Gracie is sitting down, I think, right? And Fran is like crouching behind her and is like, crouching is the right word, and has her hands in Gracie's hair, like basically like looking at the scalp, and like basically she's looking for bugs.
Yeah, but Gracie's eating a banana.
Yes.
And so it kind of looks like monkeys grooming.
Yes. So Fran kind of ignores her, or at least doesn't engage with her, and says to Gracie that, you know, it looks like the tar shampoo took care of all the lice, and it smells so nice and fresh too, like a newly filled pothole. And Gracie thanks her, and Fran says, "Love you." And Cece, you know, she's behind Fran. She's like still in the kitchen. She's like, "Well, look at this. There's no coffee. Where the heck is Rubbermaid?" And Fran's like, "Oh, Miss Babcock, don't antagonize him. He's on the edge." And Cece's like, "Good. How can we make him jump?" Fran's like, "Miss Babcock, I'm serious. He hasn't been himself. He's been acting very strange, very weird, strange. Haven't you noticed? There's not one toilet bowl in this entire house with blue water in it." And I think this is one of those moments I need to explain what Fran is wearing.
Yes.
She is wearing, forgive me for editorializing, a hideous matching suit. It is long sleeve, long pants, and the pattern is brick, like a brick wall.
Yes.
And the reason I explain this is because Cece says to her, "You know, Nanny Fine, listening to you talk about Niles makes me just want to hit my head against a brick wall." And then she hits her head against Fran in her brick wall suit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Fran says, "You know, Miss Babcock, I'm not going to tell you what I know if you're not a little bit nicer to me." And Cece walks past her saying, "Buzz off." And Fran follows her. "That's close enough. I think Niles might be a murderer." And Cece's like, "Miss Nanny Fine, Niles would never kill anyone, because then he'd make a mess and he'd have to clean it up." And Fran's like, "I'm serious." They're like now over like very close to the door to the dining room. And Fran's like, "I'm serious. I read the list. It had gloves, wire cutters, blood." And Niles starts walking. We see Niles coming down the back staircase, and Fran quickly changes her tune. "And you bake it in a 9-inch pan at 300 degrees, and you get yourself a gorgeous kugel." And Cece, I think, leaves, and Niles approaches Fran. He's like, "Miss Fine, what were you doing in my room?" And she's like, "Well, what makes you think I was in your room?" And he walked in holding a white jacket. He turns the white jacket around, and we see the back of it, and there's a face that looks just like Fran's makeup.
Yep. And she can't really deny it, right?
Correct. And I think she then's like, "Out of my way, dead man walking." And I don't know where you want to like cut the scene. I'm happy ending here if you want to.
Yeah, I'll pick it up from here. Because she's going down the hallway then, like kind of escaping Niles, but she's going towards the office. And again, "Out of my way, dead man walking." And she's like, "This all feels so surreal," you know, and she's like trying to figure out, you know, she's about to enter the office, and she's like, "Okay, maybe I just go in there and lay it all out in black and white." And then she opens the door, steps in, and we're suddenly in black and white, old-timey kind of thing.
Right.
And she's dressed up, you know, kind of like a film noir from like the 40s, right? She's like, "Oh, boss, thank God you're here." And then I had closed captioning on, so it's funny because this indicates that Maxwell uses a Cary Grant accent to reply to her. And he says, "Hello, monkey face. How's tricks? Well, you look frightened. Whatever's the matter?" And Fran's like, "Oh, for one thing, there's no Venetian blinds in here." And Maxwell's like, I'll get the butler to fix you a highball. Fran's like, no, not the butler. I think our butler is trying to kill me. Ice me. He's trying to ice me. And Maxwell's like, our? And Fran's like, ours, yours. Don't mince words with me now, you chump. And she kind of like does this slap to his face, like not very hard. And she continues, he's trying to kill me. I think he poisoned me. I'm seeing spots in front of my eyes. And Maxwell sardonically like lifts up the veil, the short veil from her hat above her eyes. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, well, maybe he's not poisoned me, but I want him out of the house. I tell you, out of the house. And Maxwell's like, darling, I've known the butler 30 years. We've had many gay times together, shared a fag or two between us, and I can tell you, if there was anything queer about him, I'd know it. And Fran's like, so in other words, you had some fun, smoked a few cigarettes, and there's nothing strange about him. And Maxwell's like, of course. And Fran is like, just making sure. Mm-hmm. And then she goes on, like, oh, you think I'm ready for the loony bin, don't you? The booby hatch, the rubber room, don't you? Don't you? And she's like kind of sprawled on the couch dramatically, kind of while she's saying that. And Maxwell's like, frankly, darling, yes. And I find it very disconcerting. I was thinking of asking you to be my wife, but I could never marry someone I thought was insane. And suddenly we're back into the hallway, and Fran has thought better of it, closes the door to the office and says, no sense opening up that can of worms.
Right.
So this was all just playing out in her own mind.
Correct. And a very odd way to do so.
Yes. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No.
Okay. Can you take us later to the living room?
Yeah, so Fran is on the phone talking to Val, and she's saying he's not going to try anything with a house full of people. I mean, what's he going to do? Sneak up behind me and grab me? Oh, let's stop talking about Mr. Sheffield already. Niles knows we were in his room. And then the phone line goes dead. Val? And Fran's like standing up, drinking, like has a glass of water that she's drinking, and Cece sneaks up behind her. Boom! And Fran tosses the glass of water over her shoulder, getting Cece, and Cece's like, well, I sort of had that coming.
Yeah, and it gets her in the face.
Yeah, but also like, yeah, of course you had that coming. Mm-hmm. So Maxwell comes in from, the side by his office, and he announces that he'd been thinking about what Fran had told him, and I quote, you're absolutely right. I do need to spend more time alone with the children. And Fran's like, that's great, Mr. Sheffield, because, children really need the attention of their father. And he says, so you and Niles have the house to yourselves tonight. I'm taking them out. Fran's like, you're smothering them. You're going to turn them into wimps, mister. And he's like, what are you talking about? This was your idea. And she's like, well, need I say more? And he's like, Miss Fine, I have cleared my entire evening to bond with my children. He shouts up the stairs, now move it. We're going for seafood. And the kids start like racing down the stairs with their jackets. And Fran's like, and Maxwell goes to like get his jacket from the hall closet, and Fran follows him, and she's like, Mr. Sheffield, I don't care if you do think I'm insane. I'm coming with you. I believe Niles is a murderer. And if you leave me alone here, I'm in danger of being killed. And he turns around and looks at her. Is there anything you wouldn't do for a 4-pound lobster? And she's like, I don't care what you say. I'm going with you. She grabs a hideous matching hat to match her brick suit.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Sorry, I feel the need to comment on this because it's so traumatic looking. And she says, so I don't care what you say. I'm going with you. There's no way you're leaving me alone with that man, because it's just too. And she's cut off because the hall closet closes, and guess who is behind the door?
Niles.
Exactly. And he's like, you're not going anywhere, are you? And she like knocks the hat off her head. No, what makes you say that? And he's like, oh, I'm glad we're alone. And he's like walking, and she's like walking backwards. So he's like sort of, it's kind of that physical comedy we've noticed before, the physical realism we've noticed before. And he's like, I'm glad we're alone. She's like, yeah, you, me, and that piercing voice that carries to the neighbors. And he's like, Miss Fine, I know you know. And she's like, nothing. I know nothing. And he's like, Miss Fine, you found my list. You went into my closet. It's obvious you figured it out. And he's still chasing her. And she like picks up the newspaper off the table. And she's like, look at this. Texas has the death penalty. Boy, they're frying them like chickens down there. And he's like, so you are going to be my first victim. Who knows? If tonight goes really well, you might be the first of many. I think I found my true calling. And she's like, but you make a great cheesecake. I say, stick with what you know. And then the lights flicker. And then they come back on. Fran is gone. And Niles like, Miss Fine, Miss Fine. We hear Fran screaming. And like we see her like running. And then Cece comes out of the like first floor bathroom. And we hear a thunk because Fran ran into the door.
Yep.
Do you have anything you want to add?
I do not.
All right. Take us to when Fran regains consciousness.
Yeah. So we kind of cut forward a little bit in time. Fran is laying on the couch. Niles is kind of fussing over her, has like, something on her forehead. And he's like, please wake up. And then he turns to Cece, like, why is she acting like a lunatic? And Cece's like, well, have you gotten a load of the birth mother? But then she goes on and explains, like, she thinks you're a killer. She thinks you're trying to kill me. And Niles is like, oh, I wouldn't dream of touching you like any other normal man. And Fran finally like opens her eyes, sees Niles, stay away. And Niles is quickly trying to like tell her, no, I'm writing a play. And she's like, but I saw the list, secret alibi, the title, the phone call from the morgue, research. Well, what about the bananas? And he's like, I was making a pie. So vindication to Val. And then though Fran's still suspicious. Well, where is it? And Niles explains, your mother was here. And so that's what kind of convinces Fran that she had jumped to the wrong conclusions. And she, apologizes and calls herself a Yenta for having, done this. But then she continues to say, what about the magazine SMN, in his room? And he's like, oh, that's a professional magazine, sweeping and mopping. And then Niles goes on to say, with the play, he actually was kind of inspired by Fran. And she's like, oh, like with my newfound independence. And he's like, oh, no, like the main character is driven crazy by her unrequited love for her employer, for whom she gives up her youth and beauty. And at that time, Fran's clearly not happy with that description. But at that time, Maxwell and the kids come in through the front door. And of course, Fran goes over like, oh, you're back so soon. And Maxwell explains it's because there were some uninvited pests at dinner. And Fran's like, oh, my parents showed up? And Maxwell, he starts scratching his head. He now has lice. But Fran's happy. Oh, it shows that, like Mazel Tov. Like, it shows you've really bonded with the children.
Right.
And then Maggie comes up and she's like, well, Daddy, can we at least order a pizza? I'm starving. And Fran's like, oh, no, your father promised you lobster. And Maggie's like, no, pizza's fine. And Fran's like grabbing her purse and everything. And she's like, no, like we don't want to, he promised that, we don't want to embarrass him or whatever. And then she kind of asks Maxwell, like, if he'll come with them. And he's like, what? I just came home. My scalp is so itchy. I just came home. Why would I go back out? And she leans over and she explains, because Niles wrote a play.
Yep.
And he's like, after you. And they leave. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I do not.
Okay. Can you take us to the final scene?
Yeah. So Fran is sitting on the couch in the living room and she has Niles's manuscript on her lap. And she's like, Niles, this heroine that you loosely based off me, I'm really not seeing it. He's like, but why? She's exactly like you. New Yorker, street smart, brunette, 24 years old. And Fran's like, seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
And he says to her, isn't it time to pick Yetta up from the amusement park? And Fran's like, oh, let her have a few more rides. And then we cut to Yetta at the amusement park, which happens to be that electrified closet. Does this thing have a name? The thing that Fran
I'm not familiar with it if it does.
Okay, I'm not either. But we see that Yetta is tucked into a jacket and the jackets are spinning and she just goes, whee!
Yep.
And that's the episode.
Indeed it is. Do you have anything you'd like to discuss before we get into the shticks?
There were just a couple of things in this episode that I thought were just like kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like one, Gracie coming home from school because she had lice with just a note instead of like someone picking her up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that seems like a problem. Two, Fran's like daydream about like telling Maxwell that she thinks Niles is a murderer. Like, why was it in black and white? Why was it like that at all?
Mm-hmm.
And three, and most importantly, like, why would she assume that Niles is a murderer?
Yeah.
Like, I had a theory that this was a Halloween episode. It was not.
Mm-hmm. I from the get-go was like, oh, he must be writing something, because there is that kind of ongoing meme or like joke, like that writers are always worried about like people looking at their search history, because if you're writing something, you might be looking up weird things, but that would look incriminating, otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So I did have the theory that he was writing something. I didn't know it was a play. At first, I assumed it would be like a book, but I guess it makes sense that it's a play. My theory for that, like that black and white interlude, is again, I think maybe a little bit of foreshadowing in terms of like the fact that he's writing a play, because it's so dramatic. But also, I think, they're just trying to amp up the whole Niles is a murderer. Let's add like the old-timey feels to it.
Okay. I mean, to me, it's
just like a classic detective kind of movie.
That's what I thought. Like that, I thought that's what the reference was. Not to like anything specific, but like that he's a detective. But it just felt so weird and random because like we've seen other fantasies of Fran's and they've been in like Technicolor or like normal footage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think again they just really went all in with the pun of I'll just lay it out to him in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally black and white.
Right.
So, yeah. Anything else you wanted to discuss?
No. How about you?
I do not.
All right. So, favorite and not so favorite fashion. Would you like to
start? Yeah. I really didn't like most of the outfits Fran wore this episode.
I don't think
there were a lot of choices made.
Yeah.
Did you like any of them?
No.
Yeah, me either.
I also didn't think the hat that started it all was that cute.
No.
It was like a brown.
And at the time, in that first scene, she's kind of wearing, I'm trying to recall. Camo. Yeah. There are a lot of very bold choices made.
Correct. The most boring and normal, I put in air quotes, of her outfits is what she wears when she goes to the pharmacy to pick up the lice shampoo. She's wearing like a green suit, but it has like a fake fur, neckline. I don't know what to call it, like buffer. It just also not great. And also she like was there without like her hair covered until she like covers her hair like later on in that scene, which makes me wonder like how many other people she gave lice to, including Val.
Yeah. But I think the reason she covers her hair later is trying to go incognito because she puts on her
Correct.
sunglasses as well. But
Correct.
it's like you've already been standing there without it, though.
Exactly. Okay.
So,
I'm done. I'm out.
yeah. Okay. Notable New Yorkers then. Again, the title of this episode is The Facts of Lice. So playing on the facts of life.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've talked about the Facts of Life, the TV show, before.
We
Is that
did.
correct?
We did, but like over 2 seasons ago.
Mm-hmm.
So The Facts of Life was a television show that was a spinoff of Different Strokes, and that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just a side note, sorry, because as I'm like skimming through my notes, I came across I'll have to reschedule it, or how to because it wasn't reschedule, it was reschedule.
Reschedule. Yeah.
Yeah. And Fred's like, reschedule? Sorry, that was like a funny little exchange. But yeah, Nestle.
So Nestle Crunches was the reference. That's a chocolate bar with crispy rice inside. And that's according to our friends at crunchbar.com.
Yeah. But I'm not aware of any gym that has a muffin bar.
No, but that would be a reason to join, as Sylvia points out.
Mm-hmm. Is the Bill Bloss comforter set? Is that the Bill Bloss an actual brand?
Bill Bloss was an American fashion designer from Fort Wayne, Indiana, who started his career making designs for other brands before he broke out and started his own fashion house, which is known for being stylish, and effortless. And that's according to our friends at billblast.com.
The Four Seasons, Maui specifically.
Yeah, an open air beachfront resort in Hawaii. That's according to our friends at fourseasons.com.
Final Net.
I believe it is a type of hairspray that is produced by Aquanet. And that's according to our friends at discontinuednews.com.
Huh.
So was, I should say.
Yeah. Now there's Val lists a couple of different serial killers. John Wayne Gacy.
Yep. So an American serial killer and sex offender who tortured, raped, and murdered at least 33 young men and boys in Illinois. He was also known as the Killer Clown because of his performances as Patches or Pogo the Clown. Mm-hmm. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
So I'd heard of him, but I don't believe I've heard of Richard Allen Speck.
So I think it's because his middle name is wrong.
Oh, okay.
Richard Speck. I think his actual middle name was Gary. Let me check. Sorry, Richard Benjamin Speck. My mistake. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. He was an American mass murderer who stabbed, strangled, or slashed the throats of 8 student nurses in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Again, according to our friends.
Did they when? Like approximately the time period?
Well, he was, let's see, 1966.
Okay.
And apparently this happened over 3 nights. Also,
yeah, there just seems to have been like so many serial killers running around in the 60s and 70s and 80s. But yeah, Son of Sam.
His real name was David Berkowitz, an American serial killer who pleaded guilty to 8 New York City shootings using a .44 caliber gun. Also, according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm. And there is no Niles the Killer.
Correct.
That was funny. That she like realizes she does not actually know his name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Fred Flintstone.
He's the patriarch of the Flintstone family, a modern Stone Age family who lived in Bedrock.
Diane Fossey.
We've talked about her before, but she was an American conservationist and primatologist who was known for extensively studying mountain gorilla groups until she was murdered in 1985. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Did you put Rubbermaid or no?
I did not, but I should have.
Because that's what Cece calls Niles. Like, where the heck is Rubbermaid?
Yeah, Rubbermaid, to quote our friends at rubbermaid.com, or to paraphrase our friends at rubbermaid.com, they are a leader in home and food storage.
Now, like I said, it was interesting to me that like the closed captioning specifically specified the accent Maxwell uses in that kind of daydream sequence as Cary Grant. So I don't know if it would have been like as obvious.
It was not.
I mean, Cary Grant did have like a certain type of way of speaking, but so did a lot of like there's that transatlantic accent that went around in Hollywood for a while. So I don't know if I would have picked up that it was specifically Cary Grant, but again, Cary Grant was an English American actor. He was known for his mid-Atlantic accent, debonair demeanor, lighthearted approach to acting, and sense of comic timing, according to our friends at Wikipedia.
See, I didn't watch it with closed captioning on, but like you could tell Maxwell was not using his British accent. He just sounded weird.
Yeah, he was. It was definitely like some type of imitation, right?
Right.
Similarly, like Fran also takes on a dramatic type of like way of talking, and they're obviously using slang from like the 40s or thereabouts during that scene. So I think in general that is kind of a nod to those type of like detective movies or something like that back then. Or suspense movies too, like maybe more of like a Rear Window, or I don't know.
Oh, so okay, so I just Googled because I did not know. I thought it was weird that he said, what was it? Hey, monkey face, how's tricks? I thought that was weird. That is apparently a reference to the film Suspicion from 1941, where one of the characters' nickname is monkey face.
Okay, but that's not a Cary Grant movie, is it?
Excellent question. Yes, it is.
Okay, then that makes sense.
And according to our friends at IMDb, it is film noir. It's a mystery. It's a thriller. And this is the description from our friends at IMDb. A shy young heiress marries a charming gentleman and soon begins to suspect he is planning to murder her. Okay. Sounds delightful.
Yes. Yeah, I've watched a lot of classic, old movies. I have never seen that one, so probably why I did not pick up on specifics.
Well, now you have reason to watch that one.
So yeah, let's see.
Venetian blinds. Horizontal window blinds that were developed in, do you want to guess the century or want to ballpark the year? You can say no.
1505.
Oh, you went too far back. 1794.
Okay.
And they were originally developed in Venice, Italy. And that's according to our friends at blindschalet.com. A highball, that's a drink with whiskey and ginger ale. That's according to our friends at the Spruce Eats. Back in the pharmacy scene, Fran referenced the guy holding a Fleet enema. That's a medication used to tackle occasional constipation, according to our friends at webmd.com. S&M is sadomasochism, which, in other words, deriving pleasure from giving or inflicting pain or humiliation. That's according to our
Mhm.
friends at Wikipedia. And the magazine that Niles references, Sweeping and Mopping, is not a real thing.
Mhm. Yeah, I figured.
I checked. I felt the need to
Yeah.
check. So
Yeah. You never know, right?
exactly.
Okay. Did you have anything more?
I did not. Did you?
I did not. So Yiddish cop?
All right. So we're going to start where I usually start. Lobster is not kosher. It is
Mhm.
not a fish with fins and scales. So Fran's constant obsession with eating lobster makes no sense to me and is starting to make me a little angry. All right. I'll get off my soapbox now. She references a kugel. It is I'd say it's a traditional Jewish dish. It can be made with potato or noodle. Noodle is better. It's sweeter. It's yummy. It's made with egg noodles, eggs, sugar, sour cream, cottage cheese, vanilla. It's yummy. I'm reading the summary of ingredients from our friends at bonappetit.com. Yenta is a word we've heard before. It's a busybody, someone who puts their nose in other people's business. Fran tells Maxwell after he says he has lice, she says mazel tov, to quote the episode from season 1, Stop the Wedding, I Want to Get Off. That means pip pip in Yiddish. It basically translates to congratulations, or that's at least how it's used. And finally, Fran makes the comment when she finds the duct tape in Niles' drawer. Wait a minute, he's not Jewish. He knows how to fix things. It's a stereotype that Jewish men or Jewish people we're not very handy.
Mm.
So I think that's everything. Did I miss anything?
I don't believe so.
All right. 90s nostalgia.
Yes. So we had the cordless phone that Fran was talking on with Val and all of that right before the thunder and all of that started.
Mm-hmm. The fact that Gracie came home with a note instead of a text message, an email,
Mm-hmm.
call.
Yeah.
Old cars.
Yeah. I'd be curious too. I guess it would depend on Niall's writing process, whether he would still be writing things out like on a note like that, or if he has like it on his notes app on his phone.
Right. Good question. In which case that whole plot point would disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Answering machine.
Oh yes, the answering machine. Remember, you and I are old enough where we know that how much fun it used to be to figure out what to leave on your outgoing message.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And yeah, again, that's another plot point. They would have like nowadays they would never have like overheard what the Jim from the morgue had to say because presumably he would be calling Niles' cell phone and leaving a voicemail there or texting or emailing, you know.
Or even nowadays, Niles would have gone on a computer and Googled, when does rigor mortis set in?
That's true. He'd have a Google search history instead
Mhm.
of reaching out to the morgue.
Correct. At the pharmacy, Fran would not have said she called in the lice shampoo. She would have probably emailed, or actually the kid's doctor probably would have sent it over
Yeah.
electronically.
Mm-hmm.
I think New York actually requires electronic prescriptions nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense in terms of cutting down on any kind of
Fraud.
forgeries, maybe.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm out.
Okay. So then we aren't adding anything,
Nope.
unfortunately, to Kiss Count or after the thing because that wasn't as overtly mentioned. I mean, Niles kind of hints at it,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's not something that Fran brings up to Maxwell.
Correct.
So we are on to future fun.
All right. So I've got a handful of things for us. First off, Fred, the pharmacist, will be back. We later will learn that Sylvia tried to get Fred to ask Fran out, and he is happy he didn't. Because later she goes to him about a nauseous making rash all over her body. And we learn that he became a pharmacist because it's near his house.
Just so like convenience sake.
Exactly. For our lovely listeners who have seen the series before, I'm thinking about the episode A Rash to Judgment. And if you've seen this series before, you know exactly what episode I'm thinking of. All right. In season 6, we learn Fran and Val go to a pharmacist, and not a pharmacist, sorry. They go to a fortune teller who predicts that Val will get with someone, like she's seeing the letter F, and Val's like, oh, the pharmacist. And Fran's like, that's a PH. And Val's like, no, his name's Fred. And then they actually go out on a date. And it's sort of implied that, oh, look, they found each other. So that's that. In season 6, Niles and Fran are going to pose as Maxwell and Cece and try to produce a play under their names. And they end up getting Sheffield Babcock Productions fined $250,000.
Wow.
All in like a very, very short period of time. And then finally, a 2-part. In season 5, Niles is going to quit and go take a job with Aunt Frida, so Fran's aunt, after he snoops and reads Fran's credit card application that had a significantly overinflated salary. He thought he was being exploited, so he quit. And that's the same episode that Fran and Cece come up with a contest to try to figure out who would be the better Mrs. Sheffield, as judged by Dr. Joyce Brothers. And finally, in season 6, towards the end of season 6, Niles quits his job over a very, shall we say, important disagreement with Cece. And Fran and Maxwell decide that they want to try to convince him to change his mind in the middle of the night. And Fran comments that she can't remember which floor Niles's room is on. Oh, wait, I'll just follow you. So she says that to Maxwell. So it's just funny that she forgets where his room is.
Is the house really that big?
I mean, we've talked about this before. It's the magical house that has rooms of requirement and like changes shape as necessary. So,
yeah.
I mean, it also has like a side door, even though it's like a row house. In addition to a backyard, even though it's a row house. Like,
yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay. So then are we ready to go to episode rating?
Yes, ma'am.
And you get to go first this
week. No. Why is it always my turn?
Every other time.
I know. It's not always my turn. It just feels like it's always my turn. I mean, this episode is funny, I guess. It's just weird and doesn't really make a lot of sense, as we've talked about before. It just like, it also sort of feels like totally out of character for Fran to be such a yenta and assume the worst, like the absolute worst of Niles. I don't really care for this episode, but I think I like it better than the one we talked about last week. We're in a patch of just like, ugh. All right, I'm giving it 2.75.
Okay.
How about you?
So again, it was an interesting thing where I feel like the title of the episode didn't quite fit with the episode, just because obviously there is this, underlying thread of lice, but like Facts of Lice, doesn't really have the same tone as the episode. But I enjoyed her saying, I'll just have to lay it out to him in black and white, and then we go to black and white. I kind of like that. So, and again, I already told you, I figured out he was like, well, obviously he's not a murderer. And I figured out he was like probably writing something. but I actually somewhat liked it, so I'll give it a 4.
Okay, well, you and I are each entitled to our respective opinions.
Yep.
We obviously don't have to agree.
Yep. And again, it's just so funny because, again, we always, have the disclaimer we can always choose to adjust our ratings at a later date and time. I think sometimes it does matter what kind of mood you're in when you watch an episode too.
That's
in
true.
terms of how receptive you are to it.
That is true. That is true.
So, but yeah. Anything else you want to talk about before we sign off?
I don't have anything. Do you?
I do not.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next week when we'll be discussing episode 94, Fran's Roots.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at findtimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.